The Houston Rockets didn't do much at the NBA trade deadline. Did they miss out in what appears to be a wide-open Western Conference? We'll also take a look at Chiefs derangement syndrome and why it's perfectly acceptable to hate on the Kansas City Chiefs. And we've seen, I at least think, a resolution to something, and I can't believe it took us this long to get here with this hot button issue. I'm Paul Gallant, and this is the Gallant Says podcast.
A radio show host in Seattle called Paul Gallant.
Paul Gallant's wondering the same things a lot of people are.
You are definitely living in the hindsight world today, Paul.
Do you feel there's been a consistent theme with the interceptions?
I think every interception really has a different story.
I was just kind of curious what Paul gets to see.
Grow up, are you kidding me?
Paul Gallant, what the hell is wrong with you?
Hello and welcome aboard the Gallant Says podcast. It is Thursday, February 6th, 2025, live on YouTube at Paul Gallant, Twitch at Gallant Says, on X and Twitter at Gallant Says, Instagram at Sports Gallant, and Facebook at Paul Gallant Sports. The best experience of this show is either on YouTube or Twitch, in my opinion. You can catch it Monday through Friday around 4 p.m., but we've been all over the place and might need to reevaluate that time. Central Time, or occasionally after major Houston sporting events. It's available after the fact wherever you get your podcasts, Apple and Spotify. If you haven't already, please subscribe, rate, and review. If you're watching along with this show live, you know how you get me to stop talking and answer your question, Ask Gallant Anything style? Well, you super chat me, like it says up there, and then I'll press this button.
Paul, stop talking. Listen.
And you'll hear former Houston Texan Wade Smith tell me to shut the fuck up. Okay? That's how you chat with the show. You can do it on all these different platforms at the same time. The NBA modern slavery deadline has come and gone. Sorry, Dennis Schroeder. I'm never going to let that one go. The trade deadline went down 2 p.m. Central this afternoon, and the Rockets did make a handful of moves over the course of the last 36 hours or so. First off, they got Jaden Springer from the Boston Celtics. They didn't have to give up anything to get him. They got a 2030 second-round pick and a protected second-round pick in 2027. They exchanged a protected second-round pick in 2031 to bring in Springer, who, based off of a highlight reel, seemed to be exactly the kind of guy that Ime Udoka loves, which is to say intense defense, the worst kind of player to play pickup basketball against, though. I relate to guys like that. And someone who can't really shoot. It's kind of what the Rockets have a lot of these days. Well, he didn't last very long. The Rockets waived him and then made another trade today. They got Cody Zeller from the Atlanta Hawks, a guy who hasn't played any basketball this year. He's been away from the team all season long due to personal reasons. They get a 2028 second-round pick from the Hawks, too. The Hawks, meanwhile, get the rights to Alpha Kaba, who truly sounds like he's not real, but this is a French Ghanaian player who plays for the esteemed Goyang Sono Sky Gunners. What a name. Of the Korean Basketball League. The Rockets picked up his rights in 2023. He has never played in the NBA. So we'll see if Cody Zeller shows up. We'll see if Cody Zeller gets waived as well. You're probably thinking to yourself, hey, is that all the Rockets did? Well, there are some possibilities, I guess. There is another team that theoretically could have added to the Houston Rockets. And what I'm talking about is a guy by the name of Ben Simmons, per Brian Windhorst, theoretically, if he gets bought out, could be looking at the Houston Rockets. That would be something weird, right? I mean, Ime Udoka did work with him back in the day, I think in their time together in Philly. This is before everything with Simmons went way off the deep end and he needed the very extended mental health break, but I guess he's back playing basketball for the Brooklyn Nets. This is Brian Windhorst this afternoon on the NBA Today trade deadline special, saying that the Cavs and Rockets are potential buyout locations for Ben Simmons.
See, the buyout is not done as far as I know yet, but Cleveland and Houston are two situations for Ben Simmons.
What team improved the who improved the most?
Leave Houston alone.
Who improved the most?
Hearing Kendrick Perkins say that at the very end of that clip made my day, and I feel the same way. It is pretty crazy that Ime Udoka has worked with him before and that there would potentially be any interest, but I kind of get it. I mean, the Rockets are looking for a backup point guard, and Ben Simmons, if he gives any shits, theoretically could be fun. Getting 5-10 minutes off the bench. Salswalker on my Twitch at Gallant says, I'm drunk, but I used to be high on Ben Simmons back then. Brandon Halam says, please buy our garbage. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at with Ben Simmons. But hey, I mean, I feel like it's not garbage as much as it's buying an old car. You potentially fix him up. It just feels like Ime Udoka and Ben Simmons aren't exactly compatible. But I'm going to play another Brian Windhorst clip because it has me wondering aloud a question that you're going to answer for me after you hear from Windy. This is again from the Inside the NBA on ESPN countdown to the trade deadline special, which really just rolls off the tongue.
There's not a lot of fear from the teams. There's not a lot of fear from the teams out there about these teams at the top of the West.
Whoa. So I guess teams at the top of the Western Conference are a bunch of frauds. How do you feel about that, Rockets fans? Does that bother you? Because let's be honest, I mean, that's what this is, isn't it? I mean, this has been a fun year, but with the last 4 losses in a row, I think it has been a cold bucket of ice to the back of the neck, a wake-up call that, yeah, there are some limitations as far as how far this team goes. They're now, after 4 straight losses, in 3rd place in the Western Conference. They're a game and a half back of Memphis. They're 8.5 games back of Oklahoma City, who holds the top seed. It does look like the West is OKC's to lose unless Denver continues to play better. And the Lakers, who are 8-10 in their last 10 games, can figure out a way to make LeBron and Luka Doncic play well together. But the Rockets did nothing in a West that I think many people would argue is wide open. So should they have done something? Saeed comments on YouTube, sucks we didn't get Robert Williams, but considering KD and Cam Johnson didn't get moved, I'm not mad. And that's what it's all about. Kevin Durant did not end up getting moved from one team to another. There was the possibility of Kevin Durant rejoining the Warriors, but ultimately it was Jimmy Butler who went back to Golden State. He's never been there before, but as part of a 3-team deal, there was a possibility that Kevin Durant would go to Golden State, Jimmy Butler would go to Phoenix, and Andrew Wiggins would go to Miami. Instead, it's just Jimmy Butler to the Warriors, and Kevin Durant stays put. And it led to an interesting tidbit from Ramona Shelburne of ESPN. Ramona Shelburne was asked about the vibe around the Suns because clearly it got out to Kevin Durant, who nixed the reunion with the Warriors, that he could be going back to Golden State. He didn't want any of that. And clearly the Suns wanted someone who could help them win now. Jimmy Butler is really their Hail Mary attempt to somehow pull out of this nosedive of a year that has the Suns at this point at 10 in the Western Conference. They are the final team that would make it into the play-in tournament. They are currently tied from a record perspective with the Warriors, who also are 25-25. So you wonder, if the vibes are toxic, as described by Ramona Shelburne, in the Suns locker room, and that it's just an awkward energy at shoot-around, does this open up the possibility of, one, the Rockets trading for Kevin Durant this offseason? Doesn't seem like the Suns would have much leverage to get the most they absolutely could for Durant. And two, could it open up the possibility of the Rockets trading for Devin Booker? That seems still unlikely. If I'm the Suns, I have no reason to trade Devin Booker unless he just refuses to play. Maybe he ends up doing that to force another team's hand and the Suns to trade him to one of those teams who forces their hand. So at this moment in time, the Rockets are better situated for a fun June, July than they were going into the trade deadline. But they're not better for the rest of the way. And I wonder if people are bummed out about that, thinking to themselves, you know what? Man, if the Rockets had done a little bit more, maybe this team actually goes on a deep Western Conference run. It's still unrealistic, I think, to look at the Rockets, and I said this on the live stream yesterday, as a team that actually has a chance to win the West. I really feel that way. But if you're the Rockets right now, I think it makes sense to stand pat, because what you want with the rest of this season is more opportunities for a Thunderdome kind of situation to, from competition, solve itself for you as you determine who you keep going forward. Can Cam Whitmore buy in as a team player? Can Reed Shepherd do well in the extended minutes he'll get with Fred VanVleet injured? Can some of these other young players step up and step in? Clearly, Amen Thompson's made the most out of anyone on the team with Jabari Smith getting injured. But I'm wondering the rest of the way if the Rockets would be better served by going for it all and having swung for the fences to get a Devin Booker or a Kevin Durant, or standing pat. And I think they're better served standing pat. I really do. I want to see more Reed Shepherd out there, especially after what we saw on Tuesday. From Instagram, Tan86 says, no trade prevailed today. NBA champs 2027 for the Houston Rockets. Okay. So not the 25-26 season, the 26-27 season. The Ultimate Fan asks, and this is a Texans-related question, Cooper Kupp or DK Metcalf? I covered DK Metcalf in Seattle. I love him. I think he's a funny personality. Physical wide receiver. Likes to bully people out on the field. Sometimes does things that aren't smart. He takes a lot of dumb penalties for losing his cool or seeming to lose his cool. I do like how physical he is, though. I would 100% take DK Metcalf over Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp, over the last 3 years, has missed 18 games. Do you want that guy on your team? I want the Cooper Kupp that we saw in 2021 on my team, but that guy hasn't been around for a while. And, I mean, I think you have to look at Cooper Kupp not quite the same way you look at Stephon Diggs coming off of a torn ACL, but I do think that you have to take a look at him and think to yourself, yeah, I think that we've seen the best from him. Trading for Cooper Kupp right now would involve giving up draft capital and bringing in a guy that theoretically wouldn't be the same player. And you just did that with Stephon Diggs. Ultimate Fan keeps saying Twin Towers with Nico. They need offensive line help. If they're going to make any trades, that's what they need to trade for. You got to save your capital for that. You got to save your capital for the actual draft itself. I don't want to do this fantasy football shit where we're just saying, like, get every single wide receiver, okay? I don't. I mean, it's fun to think of on paper. It would be fun to play with in Madden. And, yeah, having those two guys, Nico Collins and DK Metcalf, do you even need a tight end? I mean, you can make one of those guys your inline blocker. DK would actually do it, truly. But, nah. Only if they get cut do you go after any of these wide receivers. The Stephon Diggs trade was a fail. They got him for 1 year, and he didn't last the whole year. It's not the Texans' fault that it's a failure, but it was a failure. I think you have to look at it like that. James Clancy asks on YouTube, this goes back to the Houston Rockets, how long do you give Reed Shepherd to prove he's worth it? I mean, plenty of time. We've barely seen him, you know? And I thought he showed a lot of confidence and moxie and balls and work ethic and all the token things you'd say about some sort of a floor slapper. That does sound like a derogatory term, right? Talking about a white basketball player, but he's a floor slapper, that one. He looked like one. I mean, he looks smaller than everybody else on the field. He has a baby face, too. So I think you give him as much time as you can the rest of the way this year. And I think the fact that Fred VanVleet is injured and is supposed to be week to week, that lends itself to more playing time for him. And if he keeps on doing more than Aaron Holiday did against the Nets, you keep playing him. But with Ime Udoka, it's always about what are you doing on the court. He is not somebody who rewards shit play, dumb play, you know? And I like that about him. Steven Silas was not that, and it was very frustrating. Steven Silas was a bit of a pushover, if we're being perfectly honest. Other Rockets deets. They got another national TV game. Not tonight's game against the Minnesota Timberwolves, but their game on February 21st at Toyota Center is now going to be on ESPN at 8:30 Central Time. It was a 7 o'clock tip-off. They have 2 ESPN games the rest of the way. No more TNTers. They play the Timberwolves on the 21st. They play the Spurs on the 26th. Then on March 3rd, they're at Oklahoma City on NBA TV. Also, they will be the first team to play against Anthony Davis' Dallas Mavericks. So that's fun. That'll be on Saturday. Throwmans asks, what the hell? Let's cover baseball too. What do you think the conversations are like between Bregman and Boris? Well, I'd imagine that one of those sides is a little bit nervous about the lack of action, and I would say that Boris is probably more worried about that than Alex Bregman. I would think to myself that Bregman is probably thinking at this moment in time, is there a way that Scott can talk to the Astros and just get a little bit more? But I think that the silence and what Dana Brown's said about all the conversations about Alex Bregman being internal are a reflection of the lack of interest in Alex Bregman, at least past where the Astros have been willing to go, which is 6 years and $156 million. I am assuming that the last offer sent was from Dana Brown to Scott Boras. I don't think that Scott Boras is one to compromise. He compromises once, everybody's going to want to compromise with him. Skeeter 2 times asks, Rockets are going to finish 6th seed after asking how I'm doing. A 6th seed? I don't know. I think they can do better than the 6th seed. If I'm being honest, I would say probably the 4 or the 5. I think they're better than the Clippers. I think the Mavericks are going to fall. I don't buy into the Kings. I don't know how much further up the ladder the Suns are going to go after what's gone down with them, or the Warriors. But I do think that where the Rockets have been of late is more indicative of who they are than this amazing streak that they went on in January where they're beating all of these good teams, you know? Nothing against them. It's been fun this year, and I'm not going to dump on them for losing 4 games in a row, though I will dump on them for the way that they lost the 4th of those games. Tormick Johnson says, Minute Maid Park's removal is similar to the fall of Rome. I don't know. I feel like more things need to happen before we're comparing the Astros changing up the ballpark to the fall of that. Dana Brown, per Tormick Johnson, won't pull a Phil Leotardo and compromise. Yeah, compromising got Phil Leotardo killed, but also in The Sopranos may have gotten Tony Soprano killed. Interesting that you brought up Dana Brown. I saw a very amusing post on X from, oh man, what is his name? What is his name? I think his name's Chris White. Chris White basically said, guess what? Reed Shepherd, Jabari Smith Jr., when they come back, when Reed Shepherd gets healthy, or excuse me, when Fred VanVleet gets healthy, when Jabari Smith gets healthy, and if Reed Shepherd continues to play well, those are your trade deadline acquisitions. That's the kind of shit that Dana Brown would throw out there. More comments on YouTube. Skeeter 2 times says, Mavs, Lakers, Warriors will be better. I'm not convinced on either the Mavs or the Lakers. We shall see. I really got to know how Kyrie Irving's doing after the trade of Luka Doncic before I start buying into the Mavericks. And I do think it's going to take time for Luka and for LeBron to work. Though I do know that, who did the Lakers add? They added some other guy. Paul, that's so specific. I'm going to look this up on Google. Lakers add other guy who's not named Luka Doncic. Mark Williams. There you go. Listen, I haven't watched enough basketball to know whether or not the guy's good, but it does seem like people are dumping on Charlotte for getting rid of the guy. So there you go, guys. There you go. Throwman says, what a coaching change. What a change a coaching switch made. What a terrible job of reading by Paul Gallant. Silas was just there to tank. Steven Silas was a dude that followed orders. Yes, from Rafael Stone. And I do like that the Rockets have gotten away from Rafael Stone having all the keys to everything that goes on down there. Let's shift topics. I want to talk about Chiefs derangement syndrome. It's been really interesting watching the national discourse about the Chiefs over the last 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl, and honestly over the past month, because I know that there's a lot of people, Texans fans, who think that that game between the Texans and Chiefs was rigged, even though the Texans got sacked 8 times, and even though their special teams played like absolute dog shit. There's a lot of people out there that think that the Chiefs won that game because of 2 roughing the passer calls that changed the outcome of the game, and then the Texans got depressed and everything went and hit the fucking fan, which is, I think, extreme reaching on their end. But then you watch that game against the Bills. The referees aren't spotting the ball in the right spot. There's so many bad calls going against the Bills, although when you really think about it, maybe the Bills should have given the ball to James Cook down the stretch instead of, I don't know, not giving the ball to a guy who was averaging 8 fucking yards a touch. Just a thought. People like to blame it on the refs and how the NFL is rigged and all that stuff, and I'm not going to go that far. I really respect what the Chiefs are doing, even if I don't like them. But there's a lot of Chiefs derangement syndrome out there, and this is something I'm very familiar with. First off, I grew up a New England Patriots fan. They hate us because they ain't us. There's so many fan bases across the NFL that hate the greatest dynasty of all time, to the point where Spygate happens, and even though the team went 16-0 after Spygate in the regular season and made it to a Super Bowl that they lost at the last second to the New York Giants, people were still thinking to themselves that everything they've done before this is bullshit. Interesting. No one said anything about the taping on the sideline that Jimmy Johnson and Mike Shanahan did with the Cowboys and Broncos, who also won championships, but that's fine. That's neither here nor there. A lot of people were worked up about that, but the Patriots did overcome that eventually and won a Super Bowl. And before that Super Bowl, there was a bunch of controversy over Deflategate, which was the biggest bullshit story that I can remember in NFL history. Whether the balls were deflated or not, the Colts got deflated by the Patriots nuts because they gave up like 500 yards rushing in a game that the Patriots won something along the lines of 50-8. I don't think that score is that far off. But people leading up to Super Bowl 49 kept on asking the Patriots if they're cheaters. Bill Belichick citing the ideal gas law leading up to a game against the Seahawks, which they won at the very last second. But there's been Patriots derangement syndrome, and if you live here in Houston, you've dealt with Astros derangement syndrome. The amount of people that question everything the Astros have ever done because of the trash can banging version of stealing signs, which is something the Red Sox were doing. They fired their fucking manager. Alex Cora. He'd been with the Houston Astros. Was that the reason they fired him? I don't know. I mean, the Apple Watch sign stealing incident in 2018. 2018. I mean, wasn't that a problem? Wasn't a problem then? Oh, okay, fine, whatever. Let's look the other way. Dodgers are doing something. Read that book. That oh damn, what's his name? He moved on to greener pastures. He covered the Astros for a little bit, but there was another baseball scribe who wrote a book about the Astros sign stealing scandal. Astros sign stealing scandal book. Guy from Athletic. There's Cheated, the inside story. Evan Drellick, that's it. Evan Drellick used to cover the Astros for a little bit. So he had that book, and it did implicate the Dodgers a little bit, but people will look at what the Astros do and did before they won that second World Series against the Philadelphia Phillies and said, everything they're doing is wrong and not fair and doesn't count. And now the Chiefs are experiencing some of that right now. Now the Chiefs are actually dealing with that because everyone thinks that the NFL is rigged in the Chiefs' favor. And I gotta say, even though it's not the kind of distraction that the sign-stealing scandal was for the Astros and that Spygate / Deflategate were for the New England Patriots, I do think it is worth mentioning that this is a distraction. We have seen Patrick Mahomes asked about who his favorite referee is and about some of the calls that have been in the Chiefs' favor over the last couple of games. We have seen the same thing asked of Travis Kelce. Everyone is all over Casey asking if anything that they've done is actually authentic. And while it probably provides some bulletin board material for them, it would perhaps distract you a little bit. I know they've won 2 Super Bowls in a row, but now everyone's saying the NFL is rigged for the Chiefs, which I, again, think is bullshit. But if the Chiefs are all that, they should be able to overcome all these allegations that the NFL is rigged for them. I've found it strange, though, how many people who cover the Chiefs or who are fans of the Chiefs have come to Kansas City's defense, as if we're all supposed to like them. First, it was Nate Burleson after the Chiefs-Bills AFC Championship game saying, no, you have to appreciate what the Chiefs are doing. And I mean, you can respect what the Chiefs are doing. I think you should respect what the Chiefs are doing. But this idea that you have to say, yeah, I'm witnessing greatness, when you probably, Nate Burleson, weren't saying that about the Patriots when they were on their run. I think that's ridiculous. But we've seen Nick Wright doing a media tour all over every single podcast who will bring him on, where he's been pushing back against this chief narrative, this chief referee narrative. And I get it. I would have done the same thing for the Patriots if I had Bill Simmons' profile during the glory years of the Pats. Sadly, did not have that. But it's weird how defensive they're getting and how there are other folks online who seem to be trying to whitewash Kansas City because they want everyone to like them. And the funny thing is, you're missing the point if you're trying to do this and say, hey, everyone's got to like the Kansas City Chiefs. Sports are the one place where it's acceptable to hate something because of these 2 words. Fuck them. This is the one of all things. This is the one acceptable place where you can hate on something for the sake of hating on something. And you don't even have to have a good reason. You might want to come up with a good reason, but you can just hate on them for whatever reason you want. Usually it has to do with winning or beating your favorite team, or maybe they did something off the field that you didn't like, but you're allowed to hate the Chiefs. Chiefs derangement syndrome is fun because you can just hate on them and root against them. It's not working out too well these days, but I'm really curious as to why there was such a pushback to the idea that the Chiefs are hated. They are hated 100%. Oh, we're just a team from the Midwest. Yeah, you've won 2 Super Bowls. Patrick Mahomes has a very annoying brother and a wife who cries victim when she's talking shit at Foxborough Stadium to fans, and then they throw it back in her face. You've got Travis Kelce dating the most famous woman on the planet. There's a lot of things going on that make the Chiefs relevant on a level that the continued success of them is probably annoying to people. So people are watching this Super Bowl because they're rooting for the Chiefs to lose, which is weird to say because they're playing the Philadelphia Eagles in this game. But the ratings will be up. I do not buy into the idea that people aren't going to watch the game. And I think it's totally acceptable to hate on them. I think it's just so weird that there's so many people out there that are saying you can't hate on Kansas City. I'm not making up a straw man argument here either. It's weird. I don't understand it. I mean, look at just the way that they keep on winning, and there are things that happen along the way that are annoying, and you're allowed to hate on them for it. I don't think it's fair to say that's the reason that they keep winning. The NFL's rigged. But sports are the one place where it's acceptable to hate something because fuck them. And like Chiefs fatigue is a real thing, and you're allowed to wish for them to go down on Sunday in Super Bowl. Lex! More comments here on YouTube. Skeeter 2 times and James Clancy like Mark Williams, who the Lakers brought aboard. Skeeter 2 times says that Rafael Stone was running Rockets practice. That's true. And Brandon R says, fuck the Chiefs. Yeah, you're allowed to say that. You're allowed to have that kind of mindset. Tan86_HTX on Instagram at Sports Gallant comments, Thomas Edward Brady, a 7-time champion. Oh, that's right. Tom Brady, full name. He went to 10 Super Bowls, won 7 of them, 2-0 in the playoffs against Patrick Mahomes. He's going to be on the call in this game on Fox, and he's going to be offering words of wisdom. I know a lot of people don't like Tom Brady on the call, but I got to say, I just don't think you understand what he's saying because he's a winner and you're not. And I know that bothers a lot of people when I say that, but it's hard to understand the language of a winner. It is. So please put some respect on Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr.'s name when you hear him on the broadcast. If you think that he's not energetic or he's trying too hard to be Tony Romo or that he speaks in weird kind of staccato sentences, just remember, it's because he speaks a different language than you. Much like in The Last Samurai, where at one point, it's a movie starring Tom Cruise as The Last Samurai, which is a bit rich. There's a moment where the guy who's basically running the show in Japan and keeping the emperor locked away like he's a puppet, where he says at a certain point in time, after the emperor kind of freezes up like a little pea pants when he's supposed to speak up to protect the ancient way of Japan for the last samurai, the actual last samurai, Katsumoto, this guy goes, "The emperor's voice is too pure to be heard in this council." And that's Tom Brady's voice when you're listening on the Fox broadcast. Paul, that was a really extended metaphor. Shut up! Tora McJohnson says that Patrick Mahomes is a better player than Brady. Well, if he's a better player, then why did D Ford line off sides in the Patriots-Chiefs AFC Championship game in 2019? Because it's not just about what you do with the ball in your hands. It's also about, as a player, being a leader. Patrick Mahomes, he didn't teach D Ford to stay off sides. Tom Brady would have. You also got to factor in to the Chiefs-Bucks Super Bowl. Why do you think the Bucks pass rush got after Patrick Mahomes in that game? Because of their skill? Because they had some talented players? No, it's because Tom Brady said the key to this game is getting to Patrick Mahomes. Because Brady knows this. He's been there before. The Giants, those 2 Super Bowls they won. It's because the pass rush kept getting there. It's how it was the end of the Patriots-Eagles Super Bowl. Brandon Graham breaks through for that sack. So Tom Brady, clearly a better player than Patrick Mahomes. He said nervously, realizing that if Mahomes wins another Super Bowl, things are going to get a little bit dicier. But this Chiefs derangement syndrome is all over the place. You see this clip? This is Terrell Owens on a podcast talking about how this thing is rigged in favor of Kansas City, and he uses the Houston Texans to make that argument.
I wouldn't bet against the Chiefs. Like I said, and with the refs.
Don't you love that music in the background?
Honestly, with all the calls.
Say the refs.
I've been talking about the refs too. They be acting like they can't hear. Bro, it's crazy because I played the game and I'm watching the game and I'm looking at all these calls that that's benefiting the Kansas City Chiefs. Look at the game before against the Texans, bro. Mahomes is smart. He dinking around. He causing the flag. You know what I mean? He
didn't cause that one. I know a lot of people want to say he caused that one. He dropped to the ground. I don't think it was his intent to draw that flag the more that I think about it. I think he was just sliding, and I think sliding is terrible, and something needs to be done about it. But I don't think that was intentional. The play on the sideline where he flopped as he was going out of bounds, that to me is more concerning. Anyway, here's more Terrell Owens talking about how the NFL is rigged in favor of the Chiefs.
Getting the benefit of he didn't even get hit. 15-yard flag. The guy, Will Anderson, barely hit him. That can stop the momentum of the game. Yeah. At that point in time, the Houston Texans were in the game. Those calls right there advances them, give them extra downs. It changed the whole complexity of the game.
Do you think?
What I love about this is Terrell Owens now lives in Houston. Terrell Owens is a Houston Texans fan. That's why he's doing that. That's why he's doing it. He lives in Houston. Did you know that? Yeah, he lives in Houston these days. Some of my friends see him playing pickleball from time to time. Terrell Owens is a Houston guy now, much like 50 Cent. Watch out, world. Texas getting bigger and bigger. We allow United States immigrants into our country. And you come here and you can become a Houston sports fan. borderline title town if the Texans can get a little bit further. It's a division title town, that's for fucking sure. Although the Rockets have some work to do. They get their game and a half back of the Memphis Grizzlies, who they're 3-1 against this year, to get that Southwestern Division championship. But you got the AL West, and you got the AFC South. More T.O.
It's been going on all season with Kansas City, or just as recently with the referees.
You can even go back to the last couple of Super Bowl, even when the Niners played the Super Bowl. Look at all the holding calls. If you watch that tape, bro, it was crazy. They were getting clotheslined, and they were not calling it, bro. It is blatant calls that were missed, like obvious.
That's the word I've been looking for, blatant. It's blatant, man.
Bro, it's blatant and obvious. Like it's unreal. And I've never thought. Again, I've texted him. I'm like, I never thought I would say that. I thought games were rigged, or somebody got some plays in it. Bro, it is unreal at the amount of calls that are not called against the Kansas City Chiefs that are called against everybody else.
So, I mean, let's be honest. Part of this is probably T.O. trying to stay. Some of these people are 100%. They're trying to, I think, project here. They think that all these calls that are going against the Chiefs aren't called against other teams. I think T.O. is doing all of this to stay in the limelight just a little bit. Just a little bit. More comments here on YouTube. Tormach Johnson asks, should J.J. Watt unretire so he won't go in the same time as Tom Brady? Yes. That would suck to be upstaged by Tom Brady. It'll be fun for me, though. I mean, I covered J.J. Watt, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year during his heyday. And then, on top of that, I'd get to see my Lord and Savior inducted into the Hall of Fame. Tormach Johnson also asks, Paul, do you have friends? Yes, my cat. He says, I'm fine with Chiefs slander, whether valid or not. Ooh, and I think we got a Turkish Rockets fan in the house. What's up, buddy? Dunya Lideri. Nobody watches this neo-Nazi bastard, but he is still on the air. Oh, boy, another one of those. Look, here's the thing. I just think a lot of you guys don't understand what xenophobia and racism are, and are psychotic and constantly bringing it up whenever Alperen Şengün gets benched for like 5 minutes. And I brought up past examples of your country doing xenophobia to the umpteenth degree to illustrate that point. But okay, I get it. Some of you guys have small brains. It's okay. It's okay. You're under the thumb of a dictator. You probably don't have a true historical record. I get it. I get it. There's one last conversation I want to have. And it's about something that I can't believe it has taken us this much time to finally take care of. But yesterday, President Donald Trump signed an executive order intending to ban transgender athletes from participating in girls' and women's sports. In case you didn't see that, here is the President of the United States.
With my action this afternoon, we're putting every school receiving taxpayer dollars on notice that if you let men take over women's sports teams or invade your locker rooms, you will be investigated for violations of Title IX and risk your federal funding. There will be no federal funding. So this will effectively end the attack on female athletes at public K-12 schools and virtually all U.S. colleges and universities.
My big question is, why was there such resistance to this change? Why did it take this long for people on both sides of the aisle to agree that it's ridiculous to allow transgendered men play women's sports. And I'm sorry if this is offensive here, but I mean, whenever I look at these conversations that are had online, like I want to be empathetic and nice, but this is the one thing that I don't get. Like, why is this not common sense? Why isn't it common sense that a biological man or a transgendered woman shouldn't be playing with biological women? I mean, right, we know what the average size of a man is versus the average size of a woman. Like, there's a clear difference. And ultimately, athletics are about the idea of competition. Shouldn't competition be fair? Yeah, I think so. But then you see someone like Leah Thomas swimming, and you think to yourself, look how big this transgender woman is. Why is she being allowed to compete against actual biological women when she's beating them by as much as she has? And some people look at that and they say, Paul, this is like just a one-time example of this. And I just don't know how you can think that one example of this is acceptable. And maybe it's because I cover sports. I get annoyed with the idea of transgender athletes in sports just being a hot button topic to discuss. Like, it's not a conversation. It's not a debate. Like, if you are a man that's transitioning to be a woman, you're going to have a biological advantage for the most part. Sure, there are some women who are better athletes than men, but it's not many when we're talking about the top of the top. And it's unfair to women who are trying to get scholarships. It's very bizarre that it took us until President Biden left office for President Trump to get this executive order into effect yesterday, the Keeping Men Out of Women's Sports order, which gives federal agencies wide latitude to ensure entities that receive federal funding abide by Title IX in alignment with the Trump administration's view, which interprets sex as the gender someone was assigned at birth. Quote, with this executive order, the war on women's sports is over, Trump said at a signing ceremony in the East Room. I think you just heard that clip. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the order, quote, upholds the promise of Title IX and will require immediate action, including enforcement actions against schools and athletic associations that deny women's single-sex sports and single-sex locker room. The order offers some clarity. For example, it authorizes the Education Department to penalize schools that allow transgender athletes to compete, citing noncompliance with Title IX, which prohibits sexual discrimination in schools. Any school found in violation could be potentially ineligible for federal funding. Trump also issued a warning to the IOC, the most corrupt organization in sports in the world, ahead of the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles, and has empowered Secretary of State Marco Rubio to make it clear to the IOC that America categorically rejects transgender lunacy. We want them to change everything having to do with the Olympics and having to do with this absolutely ridiculous subject. And it is an absolutely ridiculous subject. It's ridiculous that we even have to spend time talking about any of this, because it really is, to me, like a common sense issue, and one of these red herring things that the right brings up that the left, for whatever reason, feels the need to stand their ground and die on a hill for. I think I saw Scott Jennings on CNN say, it's so strange that Trump finds a way to get issues where it's 80% of people feeling one way and 20% of the other. It's really funny how he gets those people that are on the 20% side of things to so adamantly defend something that is completely ridiculous. And that's where we're at with this. It should have happened already. And there was a weird amount of pushback to even trying to do it. The NCAA was even worse about it. So this question that was asked yesterday to Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, I think, is a noteworthy one. In case you missed it, here it is.
How is today's executive order going to impact the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles? For example, would a man who thinks that he's a transgender woman be allowed to compete as a female on U.S. soil?
It's a very good question, and the president has actually mentioned this, that he does expect the Olympic Committee and the NCAA to no longer allow men to compete in women's sports. And I think the president, with the signing of his pen, starts a very public pressure campaign on these organizations to do the right thing for women and for girls across the country. Again, this is an incredibly popular position. There have been many notable female athletes who have had the courage to speak out against some very powerful institutions in this country. They deserve to have a voice and a say. The president is bringing their voice to the highest level at the White House this afternoon, and he expects these organizations to comply with this federal executive order that he'll be signing today.
If you've watched that Daily Wire movie, Am I a Woman? You would note that there were some athletes who spoke up about how frustrated they were with the fact that no one was doing anything about this, and that even worse, some of these big entities that Levin mentioned there were trying to keep them quiet. You would note that these people were justifiably ticked off about the fact that they weren't allowed to say anything or else they would lose scholarships. And I feel like kind of goes against the concept of free speech, because it is ridiculous that any transgender woman is allowed to compete with a woman just from a biological perspective. I'm seeing some comments here on YouTube. Tormac Johnson says, you can have nuanced conversations about trans athletes, but most of the conversations around it are bad faith and used as a way to unfairly discriminate against trans people. I don't know about that in terms of all of them are bad faith. I do think some are conveniently brought up, and obviously that campaign slogan that they had, we're for you, not they, them, like that obviously had a ridiculous amount of success. But I just think it's crazy that one side has dug in their heels as far as they have, that we have to spend a whole day turning this into a big press event. It is a waste of all of our time. But how did it get to this point? Because a lot of the arguments that I see for allowing a transgender woman to play sports or a transgender girl to play a sport is, well, they'll kill themselves. Is that a fair threat to make? I got to bend over backwards for your mental health and allow you to compete in an area where there's a very good chance that you're going to excel? I know in response to everything that was put out yesterday, Human Rights Campaign President Kelly Robinson dragged it, saying, quote, it could expose young people to harassment and discrimination. Participating in sports is about learning the values of teamwork, dedication, and perseverance. And for so many students, sports are about finding somewhere to belong. We should want that for all kids, not partisan policies that make life harder for them. Sure, but isn't there a certain point where the competition actually has stakes, like scholarships or simply winning a title? If there isn't a Leah Thomas, maybe we don't talk about any of this stuff at all. If we don't have things that are as high profile and you don't have someone like Riley Gaines who basically makes it their life mission to call this out as much as they possibly can. But the fact that it happens at all is ridiculous. And I feel like we should all be able to agree on that. And I don't understand the argument in support of it. Because there is an edge. There is an advantage there. Is it for everybody? No. But when we're talking about competition, you should compete against some people that are biologically like you. That's at least how I feel. I'm getting called MAG in the comments section. That's fun. There's one clip from the Daily Wire, What is a Woman documentary. And this is Matt Walsh asking the executive director of the National Center for Transgender Equality at the time, Rodrigo Hang-Lehtinen, about the idea of the edge that a transgender woman or a transgendered girl might have in athletics. I'm sure this is going to get me dinged on YouTube, but here it is.
Male track runners,
they were trans girls,
right? And who decided that they were going to race against the girls, and You look at those individuals, you look at their times against the men, against the boys, so they were kind of middle of the pack. And then they're racing the girls, and they're, first and second place. Is that indicative of some kind of unfair advantage that those individuals might have against the girls?
No, it's not indicative of an unfair advantage. And I think part of the proof of this is that more transgender girls are coming out in high school and still playing sports. And they're not winning. The Connecticut case is the exception. It got a lot of attention because those two trans girls performed well. But there are many, many more trans girls competing in sports, and they don't excel. Because at the end of the day, whether or not you win a game is about how hard you work in your practice, and most of us aren't going to win. And that goes for transgender athletes, too.
Well, just go back, and not to be an asshole, but look at this guy. Yeah, you're not winning. You're not taking care of yourself. But this is one of those things where the people that seem to be talking about this the most and making the argument for trans athletes the most are the people that look like this, talk like this, who I don't really think are that informed on sports as a whole. And that's pretty frustrating to me. Because what does this person know? So now I got to take up the fucking cowl? So I'm glad that yesterday we saw what we saw. And I know some people are mad about it, and you're going to look at any reason to get mad at the president that you can. You're going to take it. You're going to run with it. I get it. I do get it. Like, there are things that the guy says on a regular basis that rub everyone the wrong way. And I don't like the idea of dehumanizing somebody who is trying to be the happiest person that they possibly can. I don't like that. I do think we should have empathy for people who do feel confused like this. But do we need to bend over backwards to allow them to play a sport where they have a biological edge? I don't agree with that. You're going to give them everything that they want just because they cry mental health? Like, how's that fair? I want everyone to be happy. I really do. I don't want to pay for your happiness, number one. And number two, I just look at this situation, and I'm glad that we actually had some sort of resolution on it yesterday. Because I'm tired of hearing about it. I'm tired of hearing the words DEI. I'm tired of hearing any stories that have to do with a transgender athlete. The left went a little bit too crazy. I get it. Like, everyone should have rights in the United States of America. They should feel safe. They should feel protected. If you are a citizen, you should. But that doesn't mean that you should get to play sports against people that you might have a physical edge over. I mean, it would be the same thing as me, age 25, after finally lifting weights, going back to high school to play high school football. I would have fucking crushed it. Maybe I'd even get a scholarship at like a D2 school or something like that. I identify as 17 years old. I mean, technically, you could argue Paul does still identify he's 18 or 19 years old, given how immature he is. But I look at this situation. I'm just glad that we can finally tie a bow on it, because it's ridiculous that the left dug in their heels so hard on this issue of all issues. And it did give the right a victory. This was one of those things where you should have said, you know what, we've gone a little bit too far. We get what you're saying here. Instead, they kept on pushing and pushing. Why? Because fuck Donald Trump? That's what it seemed to be. The only justifiable reason. And again, as Scott Jennings said on CNN, it does feel like the left, for whatever reason, whenever Trump says something, they like to take an indefensible position just because fuck Trump. Look where that's gotten you. Got any questions, you can ask him on email. GallantSays@gmail.com if you ever have a question. We are live weekdays on YouTube at Paul Gallant. Like this video and subscribe, please. Twitch @Gallant Says. Give me a sub. On X @Gallant Says. On Instagram @SportsGallant. You can also follow me on Facebook @Paul Gallant Sports. Like the page, please. This airs generally Monday through Friday afternoons around 4 p.m. and occasionally after major Houston sporting events. It's also available wherever you get your podcasts. So if you haven't already, subscribe, rate, and review me on Apple and Spotify. If you roast my ass, I'll read it. Until tomorrow afternoon, so long, farewell, and have yourselves a wonderful Thursday. Peace.